We are live. Thank you for joining me for a completely spoiler-free review of 2023's Underground Blossom. This video game is part of the Rusty Lake franchise. The game is rated M for mature, so will this video be. And another one I absolutely fucking loved. As part of this series. I'm going to try not to restate here what I said in my other videos. So, this video will very much be assuming that you have some familiarity with the games and or my videos on them. So, this is one of those cases where right from the start, they have had this very, there's this like pastel kind of banal graphics style. Nobody looks at a still from Rusty Lake and like they decide to because of, I suppose, certain aspects. Perhaps there are some things where you see something like, what the fuck, but just the basics. Where there are other games where you would, and a lot of the games, a good chunk of you are in like rooms and in the escape room kind of approach is a big part of the franchise, and there's something about finding yourself in a room and knowing you can't get out of there until you accomplish certain things. And here, they do that wonderful thing of the making you think, the illusion of choice, making you think you have more freedom than you do, because they also do this in Rusty Lake Paradise, where you're on an island and you can essentially move around freely on the island. In this one, it's a train station, or rather, more than one, and basically you solve some puzzles and then you move on to the next train station. And that is, of course, like, there is a certain level of freedom in that in reality, but in this game, not really. And I really thought it was inspired to make this choice about the train stations. I will admit, at first, it was one, let's see, I guess must have been over a year by now that I bought all of these, maybe less, whatever. So I looked briefly at each of them just to make sure, because sometimes, like, by the time I bought more than one of these, I had already played and loved Rusty Lake Hotel, so I knew I loved that one. A video game series doesn't, I guess it's true for any medium. Just because you like at least one, love at least one entry into the series doesn't mean you're going to love the entire series. So I did research each of these, and this was one of the ones that really stood out to me. Because like subway train, okay. Not because like that's an inherently weird thing to do for a video game, but for this series, for escape room, and this like supernatural, but it works incredibly well. I've already talked about some of the reasons. Another is just the fact that it does technically fit the whole banal thing, because like few things are more banal than subway stations. Like nobody likes the subway station itself. Like you might have some nostalgia because of experiences related to it, but like it's not like there are other things where no, that's the actual thing that I really love. So yeah. Let's see. I think does that pretty well bring us to the yeah. Um, Another thing is the fact that subway stations, for those of us who use public transportation, for me it's not as much subways. For me it's more bus. But yeah, the places where we get on and off public transport can feel meaningful to us again, even though they are just it's just a place where you yeah. Um, so that's another part of what the really wonderful thing they do here. I really love how they clearly put thought into these. Like that is one thing. When I saw that there was like what like over, I think they're almost up to a dozen games total. Made, and when did they start? Like 2014, 15, something like that. So it seems like a lot. I was a tiny bit worried. Maybe some of them are going to be. There's only one left of the ones that are out when I record this video. It really doesn't seem like. I mean, I'd be shocked if that is the one, but I guess it's not impossible. We'll see in several weeks from now. But yeah, so far they have not fallen off. None of these are just something where it's just um, just to get it over with kind of thing. The thing one more thing they do with the subway train thing. Those of us, right. Shit, I said that. God damn it. My memory. Yes, this game takes you through stages of the life of. I'm gonna look it up because I'm terrible at remembering names. There we go. Laura. Yes, this takes you through the life of Laura Vanderboom, and if you've played, yeah, there's at least one other game in the series that if you've played that, the name Laura Vanderboom means something to you. I'm not gonna give anything away for those who haven't. Um, yeah, it takes you through the stages of her life. The very first is literally her as a baby, you know, and yeah, like the so I'm not gonna like spoil, but I'll just say it. I felt like the stages of life they chose felt like okay, yeah, that's something where yeah, you'd go to a subway station for this, that, the other thing, and thus it emulates how in real life, yeah, when you think back to particular experiences in your life, you're just gonna feel like, oh, that wow, I remember getting off the train. Um, there's so many stories that we've heard that involved someone using public transportation. For those of us for whom that's I appreciate certain life experiences, certain lives don't really involve public transport very much. But yeah, uh, the this is far from the only game that lets you see a character through more than one stage in their life. It is very unusual for these games. That's not really a spoiler. Most of them you'll be able to tell almost immediately. Oh, this is set within a short space of time, and that works really well for those. Right. To be clear, I love every game that I've played so far in the series. Almost nothing I'm going to say is going to be like actual critical. If you hear me say something and you're like, well, that could go either way, it means it's positive. I'm saying something that I think is positive. Um, I'm comparing and contrasting it to the others, and that's one of the things that I love about these. And honestly, yeah, I'm so glad to have found, because that was, again, I saw there were so many games within such a short time. I guess, yeah, I guess technically it's over a dozen if we count the individual entries, the individual Cube Escape. Yes, that's what they're called, Cube Escape games, as individual ones, because there's like, I guess technically 11 of those total if you count the, because there's two chapters and you get them separately for Paradox. Like Paradox Chapter 1 is free. Paradox Chapter 2 you have to pay for. So yeah, technically there's 11 games just there, and then I forget, is it 8, 9 others, something like that. Yeah, this uses the fact that we see Laura at different stages of her life incredibly well. It's not one of those things where I felt like the other games definitely needed this, but I appreciated it very much here. And also, so yeah, I mentioned that other games do have, yeah, um, other games do have the element um, of seeing a character at multiple stages in their life. This is one of the ones, and and I speak from experience. I know this is not true for all of them, but this is one of the ones where they chose to make it very abrupt and harsh. You spend very little time with, you know, at least one version, at least one stage in Laura's life. We spend very little time with her. Basically, I mean, I suppose you could, if you really struggle with the puzzles, it might feel like longer, but that still doesn't mean you have more experiences with her. And it is this thing of like, because like, as a baby, she's a baby. It's when we see a baby, where it's hard coded in us, we're like, oh, and that, obviously, I'm not saying it's true for everyone, and there's nothing wrong with you if that isn't the case. And I'm also not gonna pretend like it's exactly the same when it's a video game, especially when the graphics are far from photorealistic. But yeah, it is. I don't think it's an accident that's the first time, and they even, her mother says, "Please watch over her," and that just immediately, and that also, I think it works really, really well in the Rusty Lake games when we know sort of what our role is. Yeah. Let's see. I think that brings us. Yeah. So that, yeah. We see her as a baby, and then we see her as a child, and she's such a playful child. And I'm not going to give anything away, but she doesn't remain quite that playful. And because of that, it feels really devastating to only get to spend very little time in at least one stage of her life. And that kind of is how it is in real life. I mean, when I think back, I'm too young to be talking like this. I know. You don't have to tell me. I'm not even 40 yet, but sometimes it feels like life just flew by, and we were once playful, and then just, yeah. Um, so it emulates that realization really, really well. And let's see, I think that might be the sort of overarching. So let's get into certain specific things. So this, I know I say this with every fucking one of these, but yeah, this has some of my absolute favorite puzzles of these. And yeah, I don't have that much to say about the puzzle. The puzzle, a lot of the stuff is about the same as in earlier entries. So I talked about it. Oh, and you best believe you're gonna set some motherfucking clocks. So if that was something that bugged you, I remember reading one negative review. I think it was negative review at least of God damn it, the past within. Someone thought, oh, there's too much clock setting. I don't know if they would necessarily like this one either. Although maybe other things would help make up for it. And yeah, this has you do arguably the most, at least one of the most fucked up things that you do in one of the games in this series. So let's see. I think that might more or less right. I really appreciate there's fairly little still here of, oh, you just have to click the same thing over and over, like where you feel like, well, how many times do I have to click it? There was one puzzle where I got confused because it seemed like I had accomplished everything, and then I moved around and I couldn't really proceed. And eventually I realized, oh, I have to click again. And then I went back and it started over. So I had to click, yeah. I think it was I guess it was just 3 times I had to click in total. But the fact that it was more than 2 when the second one really sounded definitive, I don't know. I guess you have to kind of make a practice in these games. Just keep clicking until they, if you're clicking a character until they start repeating themselves. But yeah, they've definitely gotten better. And this was one of the ones that used the drag mechanic, one of the best ways. Yeah, I think that does more or less. Yeah, the atmosphere, in I already mentioned a bunch of these are escape rooms, and that of course means, okay, so it's essentially the fact that I'm stuck in a room. So there's 4 different, there's 4 walls, and you can look at each of the walls. You can look in all 4 directions on a horizontal axis. Yeah, 4 90-degree turns. And there, it's in part this fact of, like, it's uncomfortable being stuck in a room. And also the fact that, the some of these rooms will have really disturbing stuff in the rooms. And here, like, it's still, 4 90-degree turns. And one of them is just to where the train is. So it is essentially like 3 90-degree turns, because most of the time you don't really have to deal with the train. It's basically just for getting on and off. But yeah, the fact that you are, like, you might not realize it immediately, but you do, quote unquote, eventually realize, yeah, I'm stuck here until the puzzles have been completed. What's the word? No, yeah, shit, that's it. And they do the thing of, like, yeah, sometimes you'll see something really disturbing. Maybe there's a person there that's, or maybe it's who is disturbing. I mean, it's not disturbing, just that there's a person there. This is also one of the ones that really understands how much you can get out of in one of these games, actually having multiple characters for us to interact with, in part because sometimes then you'll be doing something really fucked up to them, but also just, yeah, like it again, like I talked about the illusion of freedom in this and Restored Paradise. When there's multiple people there, but it's still dark and uncomfortable, it's that thing of, like, if you're going to be lonely, like, maybe it's better to be lonely when you're actually alone rather than when there's other people around. Certainly that's how I feel about it. And yeah, when there's people around and it's still creepy and scary and uncomfortable and disturbing, then it's like, well, fuck, how do I get, like essentially while you're playing the game, you will be creeped out. And let's see but yeah, it's again this thing of like the music is a big part of why it's creepy and such. The visuals, there are some disturbing things, but a lot of the time it is kind of just straightforward, which makes it really effective when every so often you find something really disturbing. Let's see, and at least once there was something where I thought, that's pretty disturbing. Not the biggest they've gone, and then right after there was something more disturbing. So it's like, psych out kind of thing. You thought that it was at its peak already. Yeah, and the audio, the sound design is again fantastic. There's some real nice, like, gross sounds for certain things, and yeah, given that the graphics are nowhere near, what's the word? They don't. They're not even trying to be convincing. That does mean that um, the sound design is doing a lot of heavy lifting in regards to making it feel, you know, yeah. Um, I don't know if convincing is the word, because obviously the games do keep you at some arm's length for, like, it feels like a world we're getting a peek into rather than like living in for an amount of time. Now, let's see. I think, like a quick comparison. Penumbra or Amnesia game feels like we're living through it. And I realize they're not quite the same because those have WASD controls, and um, you're in complete control of turning the camera, and the graphics are much more advanced there compared to these. But they technically are both point and click games, and horror, and yeah. So yeah, this is also challenging. Um, I think that does. I mean, it's not. They're they're not trying to make it as challenging as I I guess maybe the peak was um, Paradise. It was one that was one of them at least, and then after that one they did take their lead foot off the gas for a little bit for some of these. I can't quite remember. Certainly the ninth entry in Cube Escape was also quite challenging. But yeah, this one not as much. This might be another case where they're thinking, hey, maybe this can attract new players. And like every single other one of these, yeah, this could be the first Rusty Lake game that you play. There's references that you're not going to fully appreciate, but you can replay it, or maybe it's like you could retroactively understand them better. That was the case for me for certain things, for only playing the Cube Escape collection so late, because some characters are introduced there that appear in games technically made later, but if you look at Steam, released earlier, because Cube Escape Collection was only released, after the ninth entry, whereas, if you played them on the website, and I think also smartphone, you could have played a bunch of the Cube Escape games before any of the Rusty Lake games. But yeah, it is definitely enjoyable to play. And so for replayability, there are some achievements that you can only get if you continue playing after you've already completed it. Similar to other of these, and that is basically it. And you're going to get some of them from just playing. Let's see, I just played to completion, and I have 40% of the achievements. I don't think I did anything like super out of the ordinary. So far, I haven't gone back and replayed one of these, so I can't comment on that aspect. I do think it is great. There's some other games that I wouldn't mind if there was something to do after completing at least once. I encountered no bugs or glitches. I didn't read that many reviews, but I don't think, from what I recall, none of them encountered any either. They do a really good job making the different levels, the different stages of life actually feel distinct, considering that they do all have this. I don't know if they like just dared themselves to do this, or if they just realized how good. The things I explained earlier about how great of a decision it is in this video, but they do, at least for some of these, stick to this thing of. I don't want to give away if it's all of it, but yeah, the thing about how this is, each of these levels is a under a subway train station, and they do a really good job making it feel like different. Sometimes it is through having more characters. When she's a child at school, some of her classmates are around, and let's see, I think that might. They also do there was at least one time where I really felt like, oh wow, this feels like a big busy subway train station. Feels like cramped. And then other times it feels almost empty. And that's, again, the thing of like, I don't know which is necessarily more comfortable. I don't know that I would say either is particularly comfortable, but I have been at a cramped, I forget if it was a subway, but when I was getting on public transport and it was like, oh, there's so many people here, to the point where you're almost like, are we all going to fit on this thing, and then to be clear, public transportation is wonderful. America needs to just improve it. It doesn't need to get rid of it. The fact that so many Americans hate it so much proves helps prove what research has also bore out. They just need to fund it better. Like, I live in Denmark, and I love our public transportation. Jesus Christ, I can't even imagine life without public transportation. Anyway, but sometimes it's cramped, sometimes it's empty, and it doesn't necessarily feel like either is. And again, it's technically never completely empty because Laura is there. But you've been asked to protect her. Can you protect her when there's nobody else there? Is the thing that it makes you think, because you can't watch her every second. She's on one of the 4 screens or 3. And like, when she's a small child, before she starts to school, she's actually going around hiding, and you have to find her. And just they immediately remind you, hey, if you don't watch her, like, is it safe? And it's one of those things. Like, of course, a kid is gonna, of that age, might not gonna, but might like go around, playing hide and seek. Um, but it's also one of those things of like, I don't know if public transport, uh, if that's the best, a place in between, a hub for public transport, if that's the best place to do it, because you never know who might, like, you hear fucking stories about people. So yeah, really, really nicely done there. Um, Shit, did I already mention that the different stations also feel just different enough? Like, in part because it was also important, in part because of the puzzles are, of course, at least in part, based on what is there. So in at least one of them, there's a ticket. There's a place for you to get a ticket. So you have to find out, how do I get a ticket? And then in one, there's a place to buy sandwiches and such. So you, at some point, have to deal with that. And yeah, I think that might just about cover. So, as usual, my ranking you can find in there's a link in the description box to a Google Doc that has my rankings of every single video game that I've played all the way through. And yeah, this one will be yeah, I think I guess I do also want to. Yeah, I'll just say I really, really liked some of the references. I thought they were really, really nicely done. Perhaps especially because if this is the first of these that you play, you're going to feel one way about what you see. And if you've played at least one of the others, you're going to feel another way about what you see. Yeah, really, really nicely done. Um, yeah, I think that does cover absolutely everything. So, yeah, um, I rate this 8 subway stations representing different stages of a bittersweet, sometimes tragic life out of 10.